Goveia, and I live in the village of Centerville since 1973. I was a native of Provincetown, and I moved up here to take a school job. It was a little bit overwhelming in some ways, but I loved working with the kids. The kids were great. The student athletes were great. I didn't beat Falmouth, but I had a lot of fun coaching. And I think the kids that had me enjoyed me too, I think. I used to invite the whole gang over to my house and for a pizza party or something like that. And I'd make contact with them daily. They'd walk in the halls, I'd say something to them, you know. But they're very cooperative, and I really enjoyed working with them. Well, I started in '72, and I left in '98. Retired in '98. I think there were different choices they had to make, more choices than I had to make when I was in school. Things have progressed where, you know, there's a lot of drugs involved, alcohol, and these kids got to make decisions if they want to get involved in that at all, because if they do, they're off the teams. So, but they have a lot of choices to make, and it's difficult for some of them, very difficult. I've had kids go to parties and grab a beer can, empty the beer, and put ginger ale in it. Okay, so if their peers would see them walking around, they would think that they had a beer in their hand when they're drinking ginger ale. And I had a particular student that I was going to, athlete that I was going to take off the squad, and he told me the story, and I believed him. We left him on the team. Well, I didn't really get large classes. I kept my classes kind of stay small at that time. But they were building at that time. They were expanding the school physically. And it was exciting, but at the same time, we had kids going in and out of the building, and you know, it was tough that way. And then they started releasing them. Some of the seniors would be released, and they could come to school later. So it was a back and forth thing that wasn't very good for educationally, but it squared itself away. And once the building was squared away, the students, you know, responded in a positive way. You want to try teaching, you want to try coaching. It was very difficult because they were splitting a day, and you weren't too sure what kid was going where, and they were just walking around sometimes, and we'd have to stabilize them and get them where they belong. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. But I enjoyed it. Not right away, no. I still coached. I helped Dean Boga, our baseball coach. I coached the freshmen and the JVs. And I didn't really become an AD until 78, I mean, when I talking about 91 or 89, somewhere in there. Dick and I are still friends. He did a good job, did an excellent job there, and it wasn't easy to take over for him because I was computer illiterate without a secretary, but we managed. And no, Dick was a support person for me, and always has been. Elliot, I'll never forget Elliot. I needed a pair of officiating shoes because I did officiate basketball and softball and all those courses. And Elliot gave me a pair of shoes that he had in a bar. He was very, very conscious about equipment. He was always uptight. He's always be looking for somebody's equipment to return it. So he was a good man too. He supported me at some tough times. It was good. Well, we started expanding ourselves, which is a big thing, expanding our sports program, which is very important. We get the girls involved in a lot of sports where they hadn't been before, from lacrosse to hockey. You know, we started getting boys and girls teams, and that worked out real well. That was quite an adjustment. And I would talk to the coaches about their programs. And, you know, for example, our football coach wanted to play the big boys. But some of the other people didn't want to, some of the other coaches didn't want to get involved. But if we were going to compete against somebody, every team, if I was playing New Bedford in basketball or football, I was going to play them in baseball. You know, it was one of those things. Those games didn't count for a lot of schools, but they did for us. I told the coaches, we're going to play the big boys, and our games are going to count, win or lose. So that's what that was a philosophy, and the coaches went along with it. It was good. And the programs just advanced from there. Like a guy like Tom Turco, he was very successful, and Dean Boger and Spanky DeManch, I mean, Mark Titus, they just bloomed from there, did a real good job. Uh, I like baseball, but the thing was, the way I looked at the programs is every program is important to the coach that's coaching it. There are some systems where football, the tail wags the dog. Well, in our system, I made sure that we took care of everybody. When I first got there as AD, the kids would have to come into the office to get their letters, whereas boosters clubs at that time, nice boosters clubs, very, very supportive, were giving these kids jackets and things of that nature. And your son, if he was a cross country or track, he'd have to come in my office and get his letter. So we did away with that. We started getting everybody together and all the awards at once. They still had the boosters club, but we had different boosters club in different sports, as you know. But we made sure that everybody was equal. I lived in Provincetown. My mother gave birth here in Hyannis, but I lived in Provincetown. It was the greatest experience. I wouldn't want to trade my experience as a young man. It was just unbelievable. The town itself was so diversified. When I was growing up, every single one of my relatives lived in Provincetown. I'm talking about cousins. And when I was a youngster, the big thing was fishing. There were probably 50, 60 boats. Now there's probably 5 or 6. So that's gone down. But I wouldn't trade the life I had. I would run into artists, musicians, you know, a diversified population, and some nice people, very supportive people. In fact, I couldn't do anything wrong in that town without my mother and father knowing about it. Eventually we get there. When I was playing, if we didn't have 8th graders, we wouldn't have had a football team. We had probably 18 athletes at that time. But we were competitive, especially with the other teams. Wellfleet had a basketball team at that time with 6 kids. In fact, we became ineligible because one of the kids flunked off and they couldn't play any games because they only had 4 kids or 2 kids. But no, it was very enjoyable. You made the team, I mean, except for basketball. Basketball was very competitive at Provincetown. A gentleman called Coach Dave Murphy was the basketball coach and very successful. His teams went on to the Garden and would win tournaments and all that stuff. We had baseball. We just had baseball, football, and baseball and basketball. That was it. Yeah, but my best bets were, the best ones were the overnights to Nantucket in the Vineyard. We didn't stay overnight at the Vineyard, but we'd stay overnight in Nantucket. That was a treat. We played Nantucket in football, home and away. We played Martha's Vineyard in football, home and away, as well as basketball and baseball, whatever sport we had going at the time. So we'd have to take the boat, stay overnight. The youngsters, the players would open their homes to us, and we'd stay at different places. And I always stayed with Vito Capiso, the head coach, and his wife, with my wife. So, but yeah, we did a little traveling. Talking about that, talking about Barnstable, when we played teams beyond Hyannis, say Bowen or Falmouth, we'd always go down Main Street, either coming back. We'd go down Main, because we used to play afternoon games. It wasn't like it is now. You play 3:30 games, 4 o'clock games. We'd stop at the Jokums Mayflower Cafe on Main Street. That was our treat. And they were very nice to us. That was a nice family. I remember that. Yeah, it was nice going through here. Because this is the way you went at the time to get to Falmouth or Bourne and those places.
There was no Route 6?
No Route 6, no. It used to take us 4 hours to get up to Boston from Provincetown, because we'd take 3A. Are you familiar with 3, going through Plymouth? And oh, yeah. Yeah. Then we go to the city and finally get to where we wanted to go. Yeah, but those times have changed. Myself, no. The furthest up I got was Brockton tournament. We played in the Brockton tournament. And used to have a Cape and Islands one, too, that was very good, very competitive. Yeah. But when I went back to Provincetown, the youngsters that were playing at the time, they won the states in Division III in basketball up at the Garden. They were very good.
So you coached there?
I coached there. I was also athletic director there, yeah. I loved it. And as I said, the kids are very cooperative. The other nice thing was a tremendous support from parents. If a kid was giving me a hard time, the father would say, take care of him any way you can. But he's not going to screw around with you, okay? The fishermen, most of the kids were families of fishermen, were very positive when it came to their youngsters. We didn't have any trouble with parental involvement, I guess you could say. There was a lot of parental support, but not parental involvement, which I see now in this day and age that goes on a lot. And the other thing I see is, I'll just share with you, coaches don't grow on trees. A lot of people think they do. But we don't have too many programs in colleges now that produce coaches. When I was at Springfield College, we had courses in coaching, you know, how to run a squad, practices and all this stuff. They don't have that in a lot of schools now. So coaches comes to us with probably just the knowledge of having played in high school. And I really think there should be a course given on Cape Cod for coaches and what's expected of them and what's expected from the parents. But it's tough. It's tough being an athletic director right now. It really is.
Look at the kids every day.
No, it's tough. I didn't run into that too much when I was AD because the state wasn't mandating a master's. You have to get a master's within 3 years. I think it's 3 years. So as a result, I had coaches that were teaching. They didn't want to give up their summers, so they started taking college courses during the school year and limited them as to what they could do. So they would give up coaching in order to go to college and try to pick up their masters. So we had to go outside and start picking up coaches from the outside. And that can work out good. In most parts it did, but there were some bad results too.
Careers.
Well, my daughter Lisa, the oldest one, she's up in Franklin working with special ed kids, whatever, I think they still call it special ed. And my son Stephen lives here in Mashpee, but works in Hyannis for Sign It, Mr. McDonough's program. And my daughter Lori's the secretary for a doctor on West Main Street. So, yeah. And my daughter Lisa's only about an hour and 15 minutes away, so I'm very fortunate that way. And 3 grandchildren, 2 the same age, both in 9th grade, Tyler and Miranda, and Jake, he's in the 7th grade. My son has 2 kids, and my daughter has 1. Oldest daughter has 1. Well, I don't do Turco's games, except one time when official didn't show up. Unfortunately, he won. It was no problem. No, I don't do. I work the Cape though. I work all the Cape. I don't have to go to Canal anymore because they've expanded the volleyball programs tremendously here. Sturgis East, Sturgis West, St. John's. You know, Monomoy's talking about it. Sandwich, Bowen. I mean, you don't have to leave the Cape to officiate. But I've officiated, I did basketball. I love basketball too. And I work with some good. I started basketball in 1964, officiating basketball. In fact, I'm a member in good standing. I don't have to pay any dues anymore.
What happens when you get older?
Yeah. I also did baseball and softball, but it was too cold. It was too cold. The springs are cold here. I love the springs, but the springs are cold here. I enjoy sports, going to events and watching young people play. And I work for the Boy Scouts in the summer. This will be my 27th year as a business manager up at Camp Squano in Marston State Park up in Plymouth. I've been with now 27 years. I worked 16 summers with inner city kids from Boston at Camp Wing Duxbury Stockade. So I've always been involved in something summer-wise. Before that, I would take cruises. I like cruising. I've done about 15 cruises. So that's another part of my enjoyment. And watching sporting events on TV. Television in general, it's okay, but I like to watch the boys, especially the Patriots. Conversation, going to breakfast with different individuals that I know and am friendly with, taking my wife out from time to time. By the way, we like the 99 on 28. You're asking about restaurants. 99 is good. Then a Sunnyside restaurant for breakfast on Main Street. I haven't gone to any big restaurants in town. I did used to go to the Paddock, but I'm a homebody. And the Daily Paper's another one on Main Street. Breakfast. I'm a breakfast man as far as going out. If I do go out for supper, I go to Isaac's in Plymouth. You know where that is. Yeah. Steve Goveia, and I live in the very convenient village of Centerville, and I'm able to get to anything I want to with ease because the lights are all in my favor.